Greeting game designers. This video is going to cover how to add a third-person character to our scene, and then add a prefab wall so that we can make the wall structure on top of our castle. So first things first, we're going to go to standard assets, which you should have already downloaded. We're going to go to characters, and we're going to click on third-person characters. I'm going to click under prefabs, and we're going to have a third person. Now you can go ahead and drag it directly on top of your castle instead of putting it onto the screen. You can drag it kind of on your castle if you want, or let's go ahead and put it on top of our wall. So you can see our guy is on top of the wall. Now again, I always suggest using whole numbers for positions of things, just because it's easier to work with later on in case we need to move him or something. Okay, and let's go ahead and have him face outward. Okay, so I'm just going to use a rotate tool. And if you use the rotate tool, you can hold control and it'll actually move it in whole numbers. I believe it's every 15 degrees. So this is a perfect 90 degree here, like that. So now he's facing forward. So we're going to build a castle wall basically in front of him. But if you look at your character real carefully, you'll see that if I make my castle wall blocks 1 unit high, it's going to be probably about to his waist. If I make the castle wall 2 units high, it's going to go over his head. And that doesn't really give me much leeway to work with whole numbers. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale my third person. Okay, so how you scale your third person is click on the scale tool right here, which is the 4th button, and I'm going to just make him taller. Oops, I clicked on his body. Click on the third person controller, click on the scale tool, and we're going to scale his entire body. And I want to make him, I don't know, anywhere between 3 to 4 squares tall, so that I have more control over how high I want my wall to be. So I'm going to make him, I don't know, roughly about that. So he looks like about maybe 3.5 units, maybe 3 squares tall. I'm going to move him back a little bit because I'm going to put stuff right in front of him. Okay, and therefore we have our third person controller. Now what I want you to do at this time is check where your main camera is. Okay, my main camera, if you double click on it, is way down here, and I want to move my camera close to where my character is. So I'm gonna use control and just hold my camera and move him closer to my character. Okay, and I'm gonna keep moving him. Keep moving him up, move the camera, move the camera, move the camera, move the camera, move the camera. Okay, so you can see I'm pretty close to my guy now. I'm going to use control, move the camera. Of course, you can also do this with your XYZ coordinate if you want. I'm going now to use my rotate tool. By holding control and touching the green axis, I can rotate this in perfect degrees here. So I'm going to go perfect 90 degrees, and again back to the move tool and move it directly behind my character. Okay, alright, that looks good. And now I'm actually, at this time, now that I have the camera positioned behind my third person, I'm going to make main camera a child of third person. How you do this is hold main camera on the hierarchy and drag it, click and hold it, and drag it directly on top of third person controller. And now you can see that my camera is now a child of third person. So now if I hit the play button, the camera will actually follow the character. Okay, so here's just my character running across my castle wall. Okay. All right, now that we have our third person controller and camera, let's work on the castle wall prefab. So what we want to do is create these castle walls where it goes to about the character's waist, and then up to protect his head, maybe 1 or 2 squares higher. Okay, so all we have to do is go ahead and go to new shape and click on the plus sign and make a cube. And we're going to put, it's a 1 by 1 cube, and we're going to place it close to the character. So go ahead and click build to make sure it's built. And you can see that the cube is somewhere in space. Again, get rid of all the decimal numbers so that it snaps nicely to our castle. Okay. Now we can use the move tool and let's move it in front of our character, because I like to make things to scale so we kind of know how big our castle wall is. And let's go ahead and move our cube down, and there, it snaps. So you can see that our castle wall kind of covers his waist. If we extend or extrude this face higher, you can see that it protects kind of his face. So I think we can make our character smaller, or we can decide to make him bigger. Let's go ahead and make him smaller. So again, we can use a scale tool. Make sure we click on the third person controller, use a scale tool. Click on the object, click on the third person controller, and we're going to scale him down a little bit. Why? Because I want basically his waist, if he's, let's say, an archer, he has some protection below his torso, and he can hide behind a pillar if people are shooting arrows back at him. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our little wall here. So again, I extruded these two squares by holding the shift and control button. So I have access to both faces. I'm going to extend this one unit by using the move tool, clicking on the face tool, holding shift and control, and I extrude it one square. Okay, so now you can see that the archer could use this side to shoot from and hide behind this pillar for protection. Now, we're going to do this around our entire castle, but this is going to get tedious and a lot of work. So what we should do is go ahead and take this cube and turn it into a prefab. So we're going to call this my castle wall. But before we do that, let's go ahead and click on this cube, and let's actually duplicate it. Let's make our prefab at least 4 units long. So let's go ahead and Control D. And when you hit Control D, you basically create a copy of it that overlaps with it. So if I hold the control button, click on the object tool, hold the control button, you can see that I create a copy of it right next to it. Okay, and now with 4 of these, or 2 cubes, a total of 4 units in width, we can create a prefab. So I'm going to take this and create a game object, and we're going to create a 3D we're going to create a empty object. We're going to rename it. We're going to rename it my castle wall prefab, or just my castle wall. Okay, and I'm going to take this cube and this cube and drag it into my castle wall, and now I have a prefab that has all 4 units. And this is important. Please make sure that you take these 2 cubes and make it into a prefab that we can use later on, so that when we add material to it and we change the texture using UV editing, that it changes all of them instead of making and changing every single one of the cubes. So how do we turn it into prefab again? We're going to drag it into my assets. So I told you guys to create a folder called my assets. There's nothing in it right now. We're going to drag my assets, my castle wall, into my assets, and now we can reuse it. So if you want to reuse it, now we just simply drag it into our hierarchy window, and it will put it right on top, and we can move it. Okay. Now we can also just duplicate my castle wall using Control D, and then moving it. And if you want to get smart and do less work, you can click on 3 objects, Control D, and you can move 3 of these objects. And we can hit Control D again and move 3 more of these. And you can see that this is not going to, in terms of too many, So I can click on all of these. It looks like I want to do it at the corner. One more. Okay. And I can actually move the entire row of my prefabs. So I'm just going to move it 3 units. Maybe actually I want to leave one. Got like a corner one to be a piece going that way. Okay. So now that I have all these, I can Control D and move a whole nother set of these over here. And you can see how this process repeats and makes it much easier for us to make our castle wall. So it looks like I only need looks like 1.5. Duplicate another one, make it here. And again, you might need to make some customized pieces here, which is not a problem. It looks like, yeah, it looks like I could just make a 4th one. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate another one and move it over. And I can just hold and use my hold shift and use my arrow key, and I can control basically all of these. Okay. And hold this one too. And I can shift everything 1 unit over, holding the snap tool. Okay. And now we have an entire wall of prefabs. Okay. Now, since I have all these selected, I can use Control D again and to duplicate it and then move it to the other wall. So I'm going to have to repeat this. So go all the way over here. I can use the Control tool to snap it and create another wall all the way to this side. Okay. And again, we can create one that goes across this way. Okay. And so forth. But I'll leave that to you guys. Okay. All right. And that ends our video on how to make a prefab wall so that we can use to create the walls on the top of our castle.